Welcome to part 7. We're working our way through the Gospel of Matthew. I've entitled this Life in the Kingdom. We saw in the last presentation that God's kingdom, the kingdom that Jesus came to bring, to open the door for, it's a counterculture. It's a different way of life. It means a revolution in the way we think and in the way we live. In a sort of a way, we're swimming against the tide. We think things differently, we do things differently, we live things differently. That was the way of Jesus. It's the way of the kingdom. He said, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you falsely, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." Persecuted for righteousness and because of him. Not because we believe foolish things or our religious practices look stupid to outsiders. It's because of the way we live. We're living the Jesus way. Persecution means the evidence of kingdom membership. It means society has noticed, and the power brokers of society resent it bitterly, because if they went the kingdom way, they'd lose their power base, their influence, their money. But blessed, the complete inner security of inner peace, rejoicing when you're being persecuted, being glad, deep inner peace, satisfaction. Persecution is the indication we are living for Jesus. And Jesus points out that who are being persecuted were in good company. The prophets down through the centuries faced the same thing, and we only have to look at the events of history to see it. They were living God's way, and society of their day tried to destroy them and remove them, because living God's way undermines human power bases and the abuse of others by minorities. It's inevitable. It'll involve things said against us, things that are just done to upset us, even things that are done to torture us mentally or physically. But remember, it's because of righteousness, because we're living the Jesus way. Not because we're believing irrationalities or our religious practices are open to mockery. No, it's because we're living the Jesus way. It's because of him. That's the true basis of persecution. God's kingdom is a counterculture. Operates on different principles compared to the societies of the world. And we generate insecurity because we challenge people just by our lifestyle. They're afraid. They don't want to lose their power, their freedoms as they see it. They resent us. They don't like other people with this inner peace. But fundamentally it comes back to that. If you look down through the history of mankind, most persecution has come from political or religious sources. And in every case, it's because vested interests are challenged. People love to have power, money, influence, and control over others. And if they feel that's been challenged, they will react violently. Their power structures are being disturbed. You can see that in the world today. Hinduism leadership doesn't want its power structures disturbed. It controls the nations. Buddhism takes a similar line. Communism, ruthlessly persecuting the followers of Jesus because they challenge the power structures of manipulating people. But you see it perhaps today most vividly in Islam, where to be a follower of Jesus more or less guarantees persecution. And if you leave Islam to become a follower of Jesus, there's a fair chance you will die. Control over others is what people want. The way of Jesus involves integrity in all things. Now just stop for a minute. Integrity, honesty, truth, doing things for the benefit of others, integrity. How we need that in our political and religious life in the world today. Living for the benefit of others, not living to make money, to gain power, to control other people. That's the way of Jesus. And it does challenge power structures. And these power structures are almost always within politics and religion. Because in politics and religion, minorities get themselves into positions of power. They have power, prestige, position, perhaps money, but basically they're controlling other people. That's a heady mix. But God's kingdom advances through suffering love. We don't take it on using the weapons of politics and religion. And that makes the politicians and the religious leaders even more angry, because they don't understand it. The kingdom advances through suffering love. And it's a simple fact today that the kingdom of Jesus, the number of people who are coming into his kingdom, is absolutely enormous today in countries where persecution is severe. The kingdom advances through suffering love. That's the way Jesus lived. It's the way he died. And he calls us to live that way also. And there can be that inner peace, that inner blessedness, knowing that we're part of this great kingdom, which is advancing despite all the opposition. We saw that Jesus said that you are the salt of the earth. If the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. And we saw that the only way people in our society today, in the West, the only way people can see Jesus is when they see the characteristics of Jesus living in your life and mine. Far too much of our religious life is mumbo-jumbo, irrationalities, and practices that make no sense to outsiders. That's not the way of Jesus. The way of Jesus is living in the ordinary things of life. Salt brings flavor, light brings illumination, and when we do that, the inevitability is persecution. Those who are the power brokers of our societies today, the ruling classes, both religious and political, that's the last thing they want, is the living the Jesus way. They want to keep their power, their control over others, their money. Kingdom living is a counterculture. We saw that salt flavors and preserves, and you and I were living the Jesus way. We're preserving and enriching society. Let's be positive, happy, assured, confident in that. We make a difference just by the quality of living the Jesus way. It brings hope. We bring help to other people. We meet people at the point of their need. We're reaching out. We're preserving and enriching society. But light, well, light brings no benefit unless you can see the light. Light represents truth. Now, we don't go around stuffing truth down people's throats. We live the truth. Because only when we live the truth have we a right to talk about the truth. And the truth is Jesus. Brings illumination. We can bring help to people by guiding them, leading them, standing with them, pointing them to ways forward, giving them new understandings. Light brings illumination. And society then is given direction. Founded on truth, given pointers the way forward, and we do it by living, not standing up in soapboxes shouting at it. We live the truth, we live the light, and we give society direction by just being there, the light in the darkness. People can see that we've got something within us, something that gives us an inner radiance, inner peace, inner happiness, no matter what life may throws at us. We may have no wealth, we may have no power, we may have no position, we may have no influence, yet we have everything when we live the Jesus way. And just that quiet inner peace, living positively for Him, there for others, living for others, not on the make. It makes a positive impact that preserves and enriches society and brings light in darkness. I put up the whole passage together here just to make one simple point. There's an awful lot of you and yours in this passage. When you read it, you probably kind of interpret it into yourself individualistically. That's because we live in a Western culture where we think in terms of individualism. That's not what it is in the original. They're plurals. Jesus is talking to the group together. All of us together. He's not talking about an individual here. Maybe true for an individual, but that's not the point of what he's saying. We're all in this together. He's talking about us together. As a group of His people, kingdom people, living the Jesus way. Here is our mandate. And here's the picture of what's going to happen. We're all in it together. Salt, light, persecution. We don't think they go together, but they do. We're all in it together. We bring flavour, illumination, and we end up being hammered. And we can have that rejoicing, that inner peace, blessedness, knowing that this means that we're kingdom living. We're living the Jesus way. We're making an impact. Many will be helped, but the leaders and power brokers of our society will try to wipe us out. And it's happening in the West beginning today. Growing. Let's move on to the next little bit which follows it up. Jesus said, "Do not think I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law, till everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." Now we read that, and probably, if we're honest, it puzzled us. What's Jesus driving at? Part of the problem is we come to this with a Western mindset. And we're interpreting it within the culture that is our culture today. Jesus is speaking to a very different culture, where the pressures and the situations were different, But the principles in this passage apply everywhere. Let's look at it in a slightly bigger way. There are two broad views that you find today. One broad view, it's not always stated, but it's often implied. The followers of Jesus do not need to keep any commandments. God has forgiven us and we can do what we like now. We're free from the rule book. Now you can find that in some branches of Christianity, where the emphasis is so much on somebody coming to Jesus, signing the form A, B, C, admitting, believing, confessing, they're in. But if you look at the lifestyle of these people, it's no different to what they were from before. But you can see it also in an accusation made by many in the Muslim world against Christians, and it's a justifiable accusation. The Muslim view is that you are the religion of your father. So they look at the West, they look at its Christian history, and they assume that everyone in the West is a Christian, a follower of Jesus. Then they look at the lifestyle of the people in the West, and they're horrified. Rightly so. So they then accuse Christianity of saying, well, what's the point of it? You're told to trust Jesus for your salvation, for getting to heaven. Then you can live as whatever way you like. The other view is this. Well, the Old Testament's the past. Jesus superseded that. We don't have to keep all these commandments now. But this one says, keep all the commandments. Follow the rule book. You'll be judged by how well we keep them. It's a kind of resistance and retaliation against those who want to throw the Old Testament out. And you'll see that within Christian churches, where you've got to do this. You've got to turn up. You've got to go through this ritual, this performance, dressed this way, hands placed this way, saying the right things, doing the right things, conforming, keeping all the commands of a religious system. But that's the way, in fact, that reflects most religions. Most of them work on the basis of a rule book. Here are the things you do. The religious leaders lay them down. Do them. God or gods will be pleased. We need to say honestly, both of these views are completely and totally wrong, and they're not what Jesus is saying in this passage. And that raises the question, what did Jesus actually say? He starts that way. So he's making it quite clear he didn't come to abolish the law and the prophets. Now, law and the prophets is a kind of code for what we have today as the Old Testament. Now, it's not quite the same, but it encompasses most of the books at the beginning of our Old Testament, the first 5 books, plus the books that were written by prophets, which is a fair number of the other books. So the bulk of our Old Testament, but in fact it's really a kind of code for meaning the Old Testament writings. Jesus did not come to abolish them, but he said he came to fulfill them. And what we've got to recognize is that in the original, and indeed in English, the two words are not opposites. Fulfill is not the opposite of abolish. So what's Jesus saying? What did he mean by all this? The Old Testament? We have to recognize that it's not a compilation of rules and regulations that we must keep in order to impress God and win his favor and get our meal ticket to heaven or paradise. It was never written that way, and if you look at the language and the context in which it's written, it could never have been interpreted that way. But in the days of Jesus, it was being interpreted that way. And the Pharisees were the experts in doing it. And they had built up a set of practical rules, over 600 of them, which they kept meticulously and impressively, and they tried to enforce these rules on the wider Jewish population. Now that's a very, very common thing in religion. Today, the most clear-cut example is Islam, which has taken the Quran and the Hadith, the sayings of the Prophet, and combined them into a set of rules which a good Muslim must keep, and if you keep enough, God will be impressed. And when your day comes, you'll get entry into paradise. Now that's not what the Old Testament's about, and yet often in Christian groups it's treated that way. We rip verses out of context and we try to apply them today. You see, the Old Testament offers insights into the meaning of life and the kind of lifestyle that God wants for his people, the way of living that brings the greatest fulfillment. And we've got to remember that culture and society in Old Testament days was very, very different compared to today. So, for example, many of the sayings in the first 5 books of the Old Testament were developed during a time when a rabble of slaves, who had escaped from Egypt, was travelling through a desert area to enter a new life in the land that we now know as Israel. And God was showing to them the kind of lifestyle that would make their life rich, full and free. They had to change things a lot. They'd been liberated from slavery, where they didn't have any choice about decisions. They had to do what they were told. Now they were a free people. And it's a whole complete change of lifestyle. But the principles there, the insights, the kind of lifestyle, these stand forever. Jesus never came to abolish them. Jesus lived them. In his life, Jesus lived the lifestyle that the Old Testament pictures. He fulfilled all the life patterns that God has for us, and he did it completely. He's the walking example of Old Testament living. He fulfilled it. He doesn't abolish it. He fulfilled it. He lived it out. But if we twist the Old Testament, decide it's a rule book, do this, do that, and do the other, and if you don't do it, God's going to drop on you like a ton of bricks. That's not what the purpose of the book was. It's positive. It's God saying to them, I've released you from slavery. Now here's the kind of lifestyle that will give you the greatest fulfillment, the greatest purpose in life, and you'll fulfill the destiny I have for you as a nation, to make me known to the people groups round about. Jesus fulfilled that. That's the significance of what he's saying. The entire principles still stand. God hasn't changed his mind. Now the way they're implemented may change because societies have changed. So it's not a rule book. That's the problem with rule books. As soon as you've got a religious rule book, it's set in stone in history. Can't move with the flexibilities of societal changes. But the principles remain forever. And Jesus lived them out. And he shows us today how we can live them out. And if we encourage others to live other ways, Jesus is against that. That's not kingdom living. Living the Jesus way is a mark of kingdom living. He's shown us the way. He's given us the framework. He's given us the pattern. We've got to live that way and ask God to help us to interpret it into a modern 21st century lifestyle. And it will cut against the kind of social conventions of our society today. Every society down through history. Because we're living the Jesus way. We're living for others. We're living with integrity. We're not living for ourselves, our in-group. Today we want freedom. But Jesus offers us freedom, real freedom. Freedom from the endless round of trying to impress God by keeping his supposed rules. I am deeply saddened when I see wonderful people bound within a rule system imposed by religion, thinking they've got to do this, they've got to do that, they've got to do other, they've got to avoid this or that or whatever in order to please God. It's so negative. Jesus fulfills it, and he offers us the fulfillment of it, because Jesus sets us free in the same way as God set the people free from slavery in Egypt. Jesus set us free. Now in the kingdom, he equips us by his Spirit to live our lives reflecting his way of life. When you want to live that way, he will enable you to live that way. Living his way is impossible in our strength, but in his strength, he will give us the resources. He will make it possible. Now there's freedom. There's liberty. There's fulfillment. What a beautiful picture Jesus is painting. He paints a contrast. That's what I've called the righteousness of religion. You can see this kind of three directions. Now this is all religion. We're trying to win God's favour by careful rule keeping. Now just look at all the religions and bits of Christianity, sadly, today. That's always true. So the leaders set up rules to cover every eventuality. And that's a basis of much Islamic scholarship today. And then the leaders try to impose the rules on those around. I have seen it in practice, in reality, in countries ruled by another religion. That's the way of religion. Now Jesus paints a picture, contrast. That was growing with the Pharisee-type view. But Jesus paints the contrast. His way, suffering love. He brings freedom, liberty, hope, light, salt. Because Jesus lived God's way fully. He fulfilled the way of living that God planned for humanity. And he lived and he died, suffering love to set us free. If we're prepared to accept that we can walk into the freedom of the kingdom, to be empowered to live the Jesus way, he enables it to happen. He knows we're weak. We mess up too often, but he's there for us. And it brings freedom and radiance. No wonder he could use the word blessed, that inner peace and security. That's the contrast with the righteousness of religion. The way of Jesus. Not like rule keeping. That's the point Jesus is making. Jesus didn't come to bring us a better set of rules. Because if you're trying to obey rules, it's like slavery. It grips you, it controls you, you never know whether you've kept enough. It's a way of thinking, a way of living, a way of relating to others, where others are at the centre. We're living the way of love, suffering love, the way of peace and security. And it's lifestyle. It's not religious performance. It's a way of thinking. We're saying, I want God to be king. I want to live his way. Jesus, help me. That's a prayer he will always answer fully. And it doesn't just mean entry to heaven. The concept is much, much bigger. It's living now. Your living now matters because it makes a huge impact and benefit to those around you. The way of Jesus, bringing it together, the Old Testament is not undermined. It points forward to Jesus. It gives us the framework which Jesus fulfilled. And he interprets it by living it. We need to respect it as a mark of kingdom living because it pictures kingdom living. That never works. That's the folly of religion. all religion. That's the answer. In the kingdom, God can work within us. And we find that our lifestyle changes in the practical things of daily life. We started off with the counterculture of God's kingdom, which is a revolution in thinking and living, which Jesus brought. Jesus pictures salt, light, and persecution. Now, we like the salt and the light, but we don't like the persecution. But it's a package. It's inevitable. But he speaks of empowered living, not rule-keeping. He didn't come to abolish it, he came to fulfill it. And he can fulfill it in us by giving us the resources. When we're living the kingdom way, we bring salt which enhances society. It flavors our lives wherever we go, flavor the people round about. They're always pleased that we're there because we bring something to them. We illuminate. We're there to help, to direct, to guide. Not to push people around, but inevitably the power brokers of society will persecute. That's a sign of kingdom living. Because of me. Because of righteousness. Jesus lived, and he was empowered because he lived in the power of the Spirit. Remember the testing? And he came out of the wilderness full of the Spirit, empowered by the Spirit. And he fulfilled the Old Testament in the power of the Spirit. That's the way of religion. And it leads nowhere but frustration. What a beautiful and wonderful picture Jesus offers to us. It's different. It's radical. Changes our whole view of life and society. Changes our view of ourselves. That's what Jesus offers to us. That's what he came to fulfill for us. He came to fulfill and make it possible for us to go the same way. The beautiful picture of kingdom living, radical and empowering. The next presentation, we're going to look at a bit more from chapter 5, Kingdom Living. We're going to look at 6 aspects of kingdom living.